some of you may be aware, I recently hit the big 50, 50 years of age. Now, it does seem funny, it seems like time's flown really quickly, and it's just gone so fast to hit 50. I never thought for 1 minute I'd get here so quickly, looking back to when I was 21 and the world was in front of me. And I know there's still things to do, but 50 is quite a big mark. Now for me, I just wanted to do a sort of quick video where I just sit and talk around the 50 years of gaming that I've gone through. I feel like it's been quite a privilege to witness the birth of the computer from the 1970s right up to where we are now, with the PS5 and Xbox One Series X. I'm just going to sit here and talk. I'm not going to re-record it, so if it's not very good, if it's not your thing, then by all means please don't watch. I know it's not everybody's thing to watch somebody sit and talk, but I just feel that I've seen so much happen over the 50 years that I've been on the planet that it's quite interesting. And it's interesting to think as well that nobody else will ever witness the birth of something like gaming in their lifetime, if you like, because as new things come out in gaming, but gaming is there in the background as the thing that's being built on. So whether it's VR or whatever it is, gaming's there. When I was a little lad in the 1970s, there was no such thing. The nearest thing you had to gaming was board games or toys, if you like. There was no electronic games out at that time, not until later on. So thinking back, the first memory I have of any type of electronic system was probably Pong. I believe it was a binatone one that my parents had. It was like an orange one with black buttons, and basically, as we all know, you played Pong or variants of Pong. There was like football or basketball, but they were still basically football, basically Pong, sorry. We had more bats and more balls, that was it, they just bounced across the screen. But at the time, that was a major thing to see something on. At the time, we had a black and white telly, and you were able to control it was a big thing. It was definitely something that amazed me at the time. I got probably about 6 or 7, and it was really good to see and to play. It wasn't sort of then until the early 80s that sort of computers came round again and sort of took my attention, if you like. I remember I've got vague memories of seeing the Atari 2600 or the Intellivision being advertised on TV, but again, it was not something that I really was into. It didn't interest me at all at that point in time. It was only when I went to primary school, it must have been 82, 83, probably might be. You'll realise in this video as well that some of the chronology is maybe a bit out, but again, my memory is a bit foggy as you get older, so yeah, just have to bear with me. So it's quite ironic really that it was religion that got me into computers, if you like, because back in the early 80s my mum was a Jehovah's Witness, so obviously she was bringing me up that way too. Needless to say, I'm not religious in any way anymore. It probably put me off for life. But at that point in time, we weren't allowed to go into assemblies because obviously that was not the witness way. So because the school didn't really know what to do with, there was me and this other girl, didn't really know what to do with us. They took us we had a room where we used to go and watch TV, and in there were 2 BBC micros on the trolleys that they used to wheel into the classrooms. But from 9 till 9:30 every morning, they let us sit and play on the BBC micros. Now, at first, they just put on a programme like Granny's Garden, so we just sat there and we played Granny's Garden. But as we got more adventurous, we sort of looked if we could load other things onto it by looking at the instructions, because there was like an instruction list next to like on a piece of paper next to the keyboard that told you how to load programmes in. So we would put other discs in and see what we could find. And I remember playing, there was an Invaders type game we used to play. I used to play it all the time, the Space Invaders game. And so that was my first real forte into computers, and at that point I sort of got hooked because I wanted one of my own. I kept looking at it and thinking, wow, this is pretty good. I remember playing Frogger on it as well, a version of Frogger that we used to play all the time. So that was really my first foray into computers, and the one thing that sort of lit a spark, if you like. I also as well remember, now I don't know what year this was, but I remember getting my first ever owned game, if you like, electronic game, was Firefox F7. And I remember getting that and playing it. I talked about it in a video previously where we went to an arcade place, a pop-up arcade, and they had it set up and I played on it, and it brought back all the memories. I can remember sitting in the front room. I had to share it with my brother, so we'd got so long each. I've talked about this before as well. And I remember we played it that long that the power supply was absolutely red hot. The grandstand power supply was absolutely burning. But we must have played that for hours and hours and hours, and it's a really good game where if you shot for too long, you got too hot on the screen and you couldn't keep firing. And we just competed against each other to see who could get the high score. And I've got really good memories of that. I remember it really well. Following on from that, it was round about the same time, or probably just a bit later, we got our first ever computer at home, which was a Toshiba MSX HX10. Now, I did want a Commodore of some kind because I remember my cousin, I think he had a VIC-20, had a Commodore VIC-20. My cousin, he had lots of computers. I used to go down to his house all the time. He had the Acorn Electron, he had a Commodore VIC-20, 64, Amiga, etc., moving up through the years. So I always used to go down to his house and we'd play on whatever system he'd got at the time. Got some good memories of playing the Acorn Electron. But the first ever computer I got was the Toshiba HX10 MSX. Now, it must have been later on in its life because I remember it cost my parents, I think it was £99 from the local independent TV and electrical shop, and it was in the window. And now, at the time, because I wanted a Commodore 64, I was probably a bit disappointed, but got to love that machine and we played it to death. The only problem is that the games, it was very difficult to get games for it. So I used to go down, when we used to go to the local town, there was a market stall there that sold computer games, the tapes, and I can remember it being laid out with like tapes on the wooden slat table in front and also hung on the side within like the cassette racks. And you used to scan it across just to see what new games had come out for the MSX that week, and if there were any, because he'd got loads for every other system, and there were like 4 or 5 for the MSX. Now, we got a few games, and I can remember they were that rare in coming out that once I went on holiday with my cousin to Skegness, and I saw Molecule Man by Mastertronic had come out, so I bought it from there because I'd not seen it at Chesterfield, the market where we used to go to. And my brother, when I got home, unbeknownst to me, I'd already bought it from Chesterfield Market because he got it there as well, so we ended up with 2 copies of Molecule Man, which is like a 3D isometric game, not the bestest game in the world, but we loved it. It was only, I think it was about a couple of months later, I found somebody at school who'd actually got an MSX as well, and they got some games, so we did the standard, what should I say, borrowing of each other's tapes and playing the games, if you like. The days of tape recording. It was, as like, where arcades are concerned, we didn't really have any local arcades around in this area. We did have the local chip shop, which had a Space Invaders, the old Phoenix game in years ago in the 80s. And there was also a shop from where my nana used to live, and that had like a bit of a back place, and in there was two arcade cabs, and they used to swap the games around. And I can remember playing Double Dragon in there, into the Karate Champ, where you had the 2 joysticks. I can also remember playing my favourite arcade of all time because of that. It was Terra Cruster, because they had that in there, and I played that to death. And if you've never played it, you've got to play it. It's a really good 80s style shoot 'em up where you're moving up the screen, dinosaurs and all sorts, collect the power ups and things. It's not probably the best shoot 'em up in the world, but I used to love it, and we used to play it forever. I can remember getting a packet of Nerd Sweets and standing watching my brother play or at me play, and while eating the Nerd Sweets. And then the next sort of memory of arcades was really at Skegness. I've got vivid memories of seeing the Space Harrier sit-down cab that moved, and also playing Outrun and was it WrestleFest, the wrestling game, and playing them to death. And I have also got, later on in life, remember playing Daytona for the first time at Skegness, and I was blown away by Daytona. Daytona became my favourite arcade game, driving arcade game more so than Ridge Racer. We did have a Ridge Racer locally at Meadowhall. They had the big one. They had the arcade there upstairs. They had the proper sit-down one in the full-size car with the big screen. But there was always queues to play on it, and Ridge Racer never really did it for me. It is a good game. Ridge Racer sort of came back into my life years later, which we'll talk about when the PlayStation came out. But at that point, it wasn't really... Well, I didn't really think much about it. So, skipping on a few years, we'd had the Toshiba MSX. I'm going to do a video in a few months, when I get time, of the typing, the very first typing that I did, because I remember that was my introduction into programming basic. It came in the actual instruction book that you got with the system. It was weird because the system came with like instruction books, games, even a plug and a screwdriver to put the plug on, which you would not get these days. And it came with the cassette deck, obviously, so it was the full setup basically. So it was a few years later that when we got a Commodore 64C each, so me and my brother both got one at the time, from a local store, a computer store in Sutton, Ashfield, that's no longer there anymore. When I drive past, I always look, and it just brings back memories. And I remember going to buy it, and because we were buying the same pack, I think it was the Hollywood pack. So you could either have the Hollywood pack, or you flipped it round, and it was it was like a game show pack. So whichever one you had, you got that set of games with it. So we both got different ones, so we've got more games. But the offer at the time was as well, you got a pack of, you could buy you could choose one of the compilation packs that was out as a free program, and I chose, I think it was Giants, I believe it was called, which had Outrun on and some other games. And my brother picked up, I think it was called, there was a series of compilations called something Aces. So it might be fighting aces, it might be flying aces, it might be whatever. And I think we had the flight simulator one with different flight games on it. I can't really remember what was on it, but if I do find a picture of it, I'll put a picture up in this corner up here. So, yeah, that was memories of the Commodore 64C. I also remember as well, my brother, somehow, we got home, we did them all, set them up in his rooms, and he managed somehow to plug in the power supply the wrong way around and blow the Commodore up, so it didn't actually work. So we had to take it back and swap it and get another one, because we just told them it didn't work. We didn't tell them it plugged in the thing the wrong way around. So at that point we got the Commodore 64C. I remember prior to that, my other cousin had a Commodore 64, but he had the bread bin model, and he brought it up to our house once, so we played Pac-Man on it, and we loved the Commodore 64. It was something that I always wanted. Not to belittle the MSX, but the C64 was what we wanted. At the same time as well, my dad, he was a radio amateur. He had a Spectrum, and I remember that he used to put radio amateur programs on it. Like, I remember one was called SSTV, which basically people would transmit a picture over the radio, and this program that you loaded into the Spectrum would decode it and put the picture on the screen. I remember that, looking at that and being amazed that you could get this picture up off the screen from the radio, from the sound on the radio. So then we sort of flick forward to 1990, to the early 90s. I was about 16. I was just before I left school, and I got a Saturday job at Microfun, locally to where I live in Chesterfield. And again, it's funny how each step in this journey, things happen that wanted you to move on in the computer journey, if you like. So working at Microfun, I can remember the store as you walked in. There was cassette tapes on one side. I think there was Mega Drive and Master System. It might be Master System and NES on one side, and then at the back far end there was the till with the gap in the middle. You got the till on the left, and on the right you'd got a TV set up where they used to try the consoles, but we'd also got a Commodore Amiga set up on there as well. So every Saturday we used to have a Kick-Off 2 tournament. So what you would do is you'd put in 50p, and whoever won in the shop, because there were about 3 or 4 people working there, and some friends used to come in, and we used to have this tournament, and whoever won kept the money, if you like, or the pot of money. Now, that to me was my first foray into seeing the Amiga, and ever since that moment in time, I knew at some point I wanted one. I was always used to be really jealous of people coming in and buying these Amigas for the kids. I remember, I can definitely remember selling the Final Fantasy pack, and I can remember, I think, selling the Bat pack. I've got vague memories of having I think Screen Gems was the first one, but I can't really remember if we sold that or not. I think we did, but I can't really remember. They used to be on the top shelf, so you'd have to get step ladders to get boxes now. And you could guarantee that everybody who bought one always bought 10 blank discs as well. Everybody bought 10 blank discs as well, so that was quite funny. I wonder what they were going to do with those. But yeah, so from that point on, I wanted an Amiga. So it was then a few years later that I got the A500 Plus Cartoon Classics pack. I think I've shown the video on my channel that we both got one each, me and my brother. And from that point, the Commodore Amiga became my favourite computer ever. I did so much with that system. We did. I used to make games on, like, basic games on Amos. I used to play 3D Construction Kit. Played the football, played all the games. Used to like making music with Med and Octamed, D-Paint 4, D-Paint 3. I think it was D-Paint 3 that came with it, I believe. I think D-Paint 4 came with the A1200 desktop Dynamite pack. But we did all sorts. We used to make the face, like the face video fits, because on Deluxe Paint 3 on one of the discs, I think it was the art disc or whatever it was, you used to get faces and eyelids and eyelashes and stuff, and you could make a photo fit on the screen. We used to do that. We did all sorts with the Amiga. We played it to death. Definitely got us money worth out of it for all those years, definitely. And like I say, the Amiga became the favourite computer because we'd got one each. We linked them up. We used to play Stunt Car Racer against each other, Lotus Turbo Challenge, all these type of things. When we didn't link them up, I can remember we used to play. I've got really good memories of having 4 friends around and playing the 4-player game. It's on made by Psygnosis. It's a split screen, and you're supposed to shoot the aliens, but all we did was go around shooting each other. Hired guns, it's called. Hired guns. So we'd always say, right, this time when you don't shoot each other. Of course, second the screen came up, we shot you. Somebody got shot, and that's it. All hell broke loose. Everybody chased each other around, tried to shoot each other. But we used to sort of the first multiplayer game we played, shooting game. We used to play Formula 1 Grand Prix. I can remember. It's funny because I was talking about this to a friend. I had a surprise 50th birthday party, and one of my friends, Bren, we were talking about this. We used to play Formula 1 Grand Prix and race around the track. So, and obviously it wasn't multiplayer like split screen. You'd have your turn, and then it would count down, and you would pass the joystick to somebody else, and then they would race. We had one friend who took it really seriously, but then the irony was that my brother or me would get a bit bored, so we'd just turn around and go ramming everybody off the track the other way, so they couldn't do anything about it because they weren't in control. But it was really they used to get stressed with us. Oh, those are the days. So it was about, I don't know, 93, 94, just before when the A1200 came out. Maybe a bit again, like I say, let's excuse me with some of these dates because it's around about that time. I can't remember the exact dates. I wanted, my friend got a PC, he got a 486 SX25 I think he got, and I went down to his house and I played 4D Sports Driving on it, and couldn't believe how smooth it was compared to the Amiga versions of 3D games. I remember playing Elite Frontier on it and how jerky it was. The intro was amazing, but it was so jerky it was almost unplayable. So I purchased an A1200, the desktop Dynamite pack, and was hoping that it would make it smoother. Now, as we all know, I think it was a 68020 in the A1200, and the screen, it was smoother, don't get me wrong, but it was still nowhere near as smooth as the PC versions of stuff. And I was a bit disappointed. It was the first time ever I was disappointed with the Amiga, and what it had to offer. So I don't think I had the 1200 for very long, because I basically, at that point I was done working, I just saved up and got a PC. I think it was from Granada, I believe. And I bought a 486 SX25, an Olivetti 486 SX25. And from that moment, if you like, the Amiga, the original Amiga, if you like, just became part of my history. I still played it today on the emulation. I love it. The games are amazing, but it was sad really, because I always thought the Commodore would be there and he would always have a new machine, but obviously we all know what happened. It didn't sort of happen like that. I remember my friend, he got a CD32, and we literally sort of took the mickey, if I'm being honest. It was a bit nasty, if you like, a bit naughty, but when he showed us the stuff, it was just like, well, the SNES and the Mega Drive were out at that point in time, and it didn't really stand up to it at all. The game, probably the one that did was Microcosm, because it was FMV, but even that, the PC was doing stuff like that at that time as well, because it was the time of FMV games like Nova Storm and stuff. So it didn't really stand out. When you got Dangerous Streets and he was trying to compare that to Street Fighter 2 on the SNES, yeah, it was never going to happen really. And it was a shame, because it wasn't even a system that you would think, well, it pushed boundaries, because there was other systems out there doing the same that would have done more, like the 3DO and stuff, that would have been better. But yeah, it was a sad shame really. And one bit I didn't miss as well, I remember playing this on the SNES at another friend's house. It's funny because all my friends had different consoles and computers, so you got to play on all the different types of systems that were out. And again, I was never really a Nintendo person. I preferred the Sega stuff for some reason. I don't know if that was because of Daytona or what, but I never really... and Outrun stuff and the Afterburner games, Sega was always my preferred console of choice, if you like. If I never owned one back in the day. I owned one later on when I was collecting retro systems, but I never owned one back in the day, because I was always the computer side of things. So yeah, I digress. So going back to the PC, yeah, the PC was brilliant, and I've never ever from that day gone back. I've always been on a PC. I've always been playing PCs. I remember playing a game by Disney called Stunt Island. Loved that game. If you've never played it, if you've got a PC, try and play it on the emulation on a DOS box or something, where you can make your own stunts. So basically you can set cameras up and crash into buildings or tip cars up and stuff. It's really good. It's obviously crude vector, sort of 3D vector graphics type thing, but I enjoyed it. It's a good system. I've sort of had lots of PCs over the years. Excuse me, because I've got my notes in front so I don't forget anything. So I had a Pentium 75, that was my first Pentium, and Pentium 133, Pentium 3, Pentium 4. I had a 3DFX card. I actually had a Power VR card to start with, but it didn't really take off like the 3DFX, so I sold that and then bought a 3DFX card, which obviously changed the history of PC gaming, if you like. With the advent of 3D cards, the PC became a viable games machine, which has been since. It is always there. No matter what comes and goes, the PC is always there. Obviously, it's getting better as well. It's evolving with things and VR and things like that. But it's always at the forefront of the technology that's out there. So we're sort of moving into the late 90s now. I did have other consoles as well. I had a Dreamcast when they came out. Again, Sega. I love Sega stuff. I had a Dreamcast. I had the Xbox. I had Xbox 360. And an Xbox One. Gone through all the consoles. The issue is though, I start to wane on the games. I'm not a big 3D gamer. I can't really play it very well. It's funny that the older I got, the worse it got. So I get like motion sickness now, so I can't play 3D games because they make me feel sick. So sort of limits to what you can play on the modern systems. I used to like Daytona on the Dreamcast. I can play the racing games fine. It's just the ones that like the first person shooters. Don't play any of them anymore because I just can't play them, to be honest. Which is a shame because that's what most of the games are nowadays. But yeah, seen lots of games come and go over the years. Remember the TIE Fighter games on the PC? They were amazing. Wing Commander game. There's so many games I can list and go through, but I'll be here all night. Well, I just found it interesting that it's sort of you, if you were born in my era, you've gone through from seeing the basics of Pong all the way through to where we are today, with like virtual reality and photorealistic games, and nobody else is going to go through that that sort of evolution, if you like, because you're never going to go backwards unless something major happens and we all get wiped out and we all start again. Yeah, then you might do, but in reality, as far as you can see, nobody else is going to live that same era. You're never going to get that feeling again. I remember playing the PlayStation 1 for the first time. My friend Matt Troke is a really good friend. I think he's on YouTube. He ordered because obviously, again, this is something that was weird. Back in the 90s, consoles used to come out a year or 2 years in other countries, in like Japan, before they came out, even in the UK. So they come out in Japan, come out in America, then come out in the UK or in Europe. So we were always sometimes a year behind what the technology was. So I remember he ordered a PlayStation 1 from Japan and got copied games for it. And I remember being at his house and seeing Ridge Racer on it for the first time, and just being blown away the fact that you'd got a 3D game like the arcade being played on the TV. Again, it was that wow factor moment that you just don't get these very often nowadays with gaming. It's like you saw Pong, it was wow. You saw the C64 with better graphics, wow. You saw the Amiga, wow. Again, it's like every time it kept jumping, the consoles like for the first, like even the Philips CDI and the 3DO with the video FMV type games, it was like wow, because you'd not seen them before. So to see a 3D game like that on your TV, what was in the arcades, and it was almost, well, you thought it was the same. That's another word that you don't hear these days, arcade perfect games. You thought the Spectrum was arcade perfect? No, I don't think it was. But anyway, yeah, so to see that, it was. I remember playing it. We played because it came with a PlayStation. I think it was called the PS Demo or something. So it got Tekken on it. I think it got Toshinden as well, or he maybe bought Toshinden. But I remember playing that, and we just thought this is amazing, really, compared to what's out there. And you just don't get that anymore these days. So it's a shame, really, and it makes you wonder where gaming is going to go, because we've got to a point now where, in reality, it's just regurgitating old titles over and over again on slightly better systems. After the Xbox, the original Xbox and the Xbox 360, for me, the leap between the generations is just hardly, you can't see it anymore. It's like, yeah, the graphics might be slightly better, and you might be, but it's not as big a leap as it was back in our day. Back in the 80s and 90s, the leap just isn't as big anymore, and it seems to be getting smaller and smaller, even on the PC. And if you notice, a lot of the games now, it's the indie scene that seems to be coming through underneath, with the indie type games replicating the older type graphics and things, which is quite interesting to see. A lot of people nowadays collect retro stuff. I went into that sort of retro collecting thing for a bit. I had everything. I had all sorts of consoles and computers, and it was before they sort of went crazy priced. I can remember picking an Amiga 1200 up off the car boot for £8 and an Acorn Electron for 10. I think I got a CD32 for something like, it was a bit more expensive. It was around £50. But now they're going for like £300 or £400. It's crazy money. But it got to the point where I'd got all these systems and I was just never using them. They were just on the shelves with the games and stuff. And I thought one day, why? Somebody else might get use from them. And I'd rather use, I know I talk about it a lot, I use emulation. But because of emulation, I get to play stuff that I would never have played, because I actually sit down, it takes 2 seconds to do, and I play the game. Yeah, it might not be the perfect aesthetics is the word of the original machine and the original controller and the CRT or whatever, but I still get to play that game and enjoy it, and that's what I do on my channel. I love doing that, playing stuff I've heard of but I've never seen. I love doing stuff like that. I enjoy it, and that's why I do the channel, to be honest. It's just reminded me of something else of going back as well that I've not really talked about, going to the newsagents and seeing what the latest magazines was. I remember going to local newsagents back in the day, and especially with the MSX, but then there weren't many MSX magazines out. But but more so with the Commodore 64 and the Amiga, being excited about what was coming next month and what the demo was going to be, and playing the demo and playing the free games, and something the kids today just don't get, because you get demos, but you just download them, or they're there already. It's just not the same as the anticipation for stuff isn't there. The arcade conversions, you used to be excited for an arcade conversion of a game. There isn't any. To be honest, now most arcades are conversions of games that are on the consoles. So it's sort of flipped again, hasn't it? Games of films, Ocean, the amount of games that Ocean made that were film based, some crap, some rubbish, as we know, but some good, like RoboCop. I used to love RoboCop game, but you don't get many games now of films, do you? Not really. You get the odd one, but not of the modern ones. So things have changed so much, and I just feel what's the word? Grateful that I grew up in that time period and experienced it all, and it's almost the nostalgia and the excitement of growing through each sort of era of where to get where we are today. So yeah, I just thought I'd do a video on that. I just wanted to do something looking back over the 50 years of my gaming life, if you like. One other thing I'd like to say is thank you to everybody who's subbed to the channel. I hit 1,000 subs I think it's about a month ago, and I was meaning to do a video, but I've just not had time. But I just want to say thank you to everybody who's subbed. It really does make a big difference to me. As I say, I don't do this for money or anything like that. I just do it to enjoy the games and the chat and the banter of the other people who are like-minded like myself. Who come on and talk about the stuff what we're playing on. So a big thank you for that. And if you've got a different path, if you like, you've got any different experiences of that era, or you disagree with some of the stuff, then please comment below, because I love answering comments. There is no bad comments. If you might have a totally different perspective on that time period to what I have, and that's fine, because everybody lives different lives through it. So yeah. Well, thank you very much for taking the time out to listen to this, if you've listened all the way through, and hoping to do some more videos soon. I'm going to be doing a new series over Christmas called What's in Santa's Sack, where we pick a year and then look basically at what toys and games and sweets and things you would have potentially got in your stocking that year, due to what was out at the time. So that's coming in December, so please stick around for that if you're into that kind of thing. Yeah, and thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. If you enjoyed this video, then please like and subscribe. Also, for more up-to-date information, please follow my Facebook page.